wonderful time as always. Now, what have I got in today's program? Quite a lot. Quite a lot. And the gentleman I'm with today has a lot to tell us, especially in terms of what is happening at the Horn of Africa. Now, Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, TPLA, signed a peace agreement with Ethiopia early this month. Not this month, by the way, November. But will this end the war in Ethiopia? That's one of the questions we're going to try and answer in today's program. Now, towards the end of the 2020, this is part of the background, a civil war broke out in the Horn of Africa. This time, this internal war was in a country that had been stable for decades and was admired by many other African countries, and both on the continent and abroad. Ethiopia, the country that has the headquarters of the African Union in its capital, Addis Ababa, was at war with herself. Remember that. This is in 2020. Now, the war had broken out between the regional governments of Tigray, and that is, of course, led by the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLA, and the federal government led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, if you can remember that. Now, the question is, now, there is a peace agreement that has been signed by the two warring parties, sponsored by the African Union, and both in Pretoria, by the way, and in Nairobi, Kenya. The question is, will this work? Will this work? And that is one of the things that we are trying to discuss in today's program. With me in the studio is Mr. Yafet Zeo, author and political advisor to Eritrean ambassador in UK. Thank you very much for coming to the program.
Thank you for having me here.
Okay. Now, that is the key question I'm trying to look at as far as this peace agreement is signed. Will this peace agreement really work? Because so many people, Eritrea, Somalia, Southern Sudan, and all the other people are looking at it and saying, look, there were certain things which were not put into the agreement. What do you think? Do you really think this agreement will work?
Thank you for the question. I think, just as a background clarification, in your introduction you said that the civil war broke out. Civil war, actually, the TPLF was responsible for the war. Which launched the civil war by attacking the Ethiopian army command.
It was instigated in starting the civil war.
Yeah, it started the civil war. It's one of the miscalculations of the TPLF. The TPLF has been characterized by miscalculations. It attacked the Ethiopian army, it attacked Eritrea, it launched a war on other regions in Ethiopia, and for the past 2 years it's been going down a path of destruction where a lot of people have died and a lot of destruction and death has followed the TPLF wherever it has gone.
Okay.
And now a peace agreement has been signed between the Ethiopian government and the TPLF.
Okay.
And we all hope that it will bring peace, and I think there's no reason why peace shouldn't prevail.
Yeah.
Because the only reasons why the TPLF has signed this agreement is because it is a run out of steam. So it's tried its best to overcome Ethiopia, to overcome Eritrea, and on the battleground, the Ethiopian army has defeated the TPLF, and it has got no options but to actually sign a peace agreement. Okay. And furthermore, it has no option but to adhere by the terms of the peace agreement.
Now, the question that comes into mind is that most of the regional governments which are within the region, some were never consulted, especially Eritrea being so close there and actually being involved within the war. It's not, I wonder whether it's even mentioned in the agreement at all, because it contributes quite a lot as far as because the Tigrayans were saying that they were getting involved in the war as them. In fact, they were being used by the Ethiopian army as well in fighting in the Tigrayan region. So,
I understand that
are they part of the agreement?
There's no need for the Eritrea to be part of the agreement, because the agreement is an internal issue, an Ethiopian internal issue.
Yeah.
Going back to 2018, in September, Ethiopia and Eritrea signed a peace agreement and a bilateral security arrangements.
Yeah.
So there's no war between Eritrea and Ethiopia.
Yeah,
So there's no reason for Eritrea to be at the peace talks, because this is between the Ethiopians and the TPLF. It's an internal matter.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether the TPLF thinks itself as a different entity to the Ethiopian state or not,
Yeah.
it's still Eritrea has no place at the peace talks, because Eritrea and Ethiopia are not at war.
Okay. Okay.
And with regards to the Eritrea's involvement or supposed involvement, what we have to realize is that Eritrea, like any other nation, sovereign nation in the world, has the right to self-defense.
Of course. Of course.
And we have issues. I mean, this is something that's happening on the front porch of Ethiopia, on the very borders of Eritrea. And we have countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, flying across the world.
Yeah.
For reasons they claim for for the security interests, to preserve the security interests. So Eritrea has got every right to do whatever it has to do
Okay.
to protect itself from, especially from an organization that attacked Eritrea. And Eritrea has got every right.
What about the issue, which again was never tackled, the issue of Tigray Liberation Movement saying that Prime Minister Abiy has to step down and we get a new Prime Minister in Ethiopia to deal with this? If we have a new beginning, this could help in transforming the disputes that have been existing between the two. This was not tackled within the agreement.
I think it's from the outside, from an outsider's point of view.
Yeah.
I think Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was elected by the Ethiopian government, by the Ethiopian people.
Yeah.
It was deemed to be a fair and free election. So it would be up to the Ethiopian people to decide whether Prime Minister Abiy goes or stays.
Yeah.
The TPLF is in no position to demand anything from the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister, I think, both the Prime Minister and the President of Eritrea has offered, given the TPLF plenty of chances in the past 4 years, since nearly 5 years now. And every turn, the TPLF has spurned the chance for peace.
Okay.
And at the moment, it finds itself against...
At the back wall, yeah.
Yeah, it's on the back foot. It's lost, its military adventurism has come to a grinding halt. And the Ethiopian army has done its job.
Now, the issues are here. There's a refugee crisis within the region, scattered all over Sudan, scattered all over Somalia, scattered in other parts of the East African region. That part of the agreement was never properly put together in Nairobi, because it was discussed by UNDP, United Nations High Commission for Refugees, and also the regions where most of the people are. And how do you see that as an issue now? Could that be, because in future, if these people are not properly taken care of, this could be another way of instigating more violence, even if it's not a war as such, but could be instability. It could instabilize the area if they are not taken care of within the agreement.
Yeah, it's a question with regards to the refugee questions. One thing we have to be clear about is we have to be, for example, if you speak to the TPLF and its supporters, they refer to Western Tigray.
Yeah.
Western Tigray is a very obscure term.
Yeah.
Because if you were to speak to people from other parts of Ethiopia, what the TPLF call Western Tigray, they call Wolkite, and it's basically considered to be part of the Amhara region. And again, they say northwestern Tigray, which actually they refer to Badime. Badime is Eritrean territory.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about people who have been displaced from these regions,
and not just the regions, but even internally.
Yes, internally.
There are so many displaced within internally, and they will need to go back to these regions as well.
And they need to have support. But depending on where they want to go back, for example, Tigrayans or Ethiopian citizens who were living in Badime for the past 20 years will not go back to Badime because Badime is Eritrean territory.
Oh,
so
okay.
They'll have to find somewhere else to go. In the case of Wolkite and that part of...
No, but if they don't go back, couldn't this destabilize the area,
Well,
the region, by
yeah.
saying, look, we want to go back home. We could go back home.
Yeah, they can go back home, but home is not Badama.
Yeah.
Home is not Badama.
Okay.
So
Okay.
even Walkite and that part of the region in Ethiopia, for the Tigrayans, it's not home. They've been resettled there. The original inhabitants have been displaced for political reasons. So it's a very complicated question. I think it was also dealt with because they were saying that it will be dealt with according to the Ethiopian constitution. So the Ethiopians will have to deal with that. Like you said, it's a potentially...
How about outsiders? Because this is one of the areas where they try to say, look, if we get an outside force to come in and be part of it, because if you get an outsider, the chances an outsider is neutral, and being neutral, we could see both sides of the coin rather than having one side. Despite the fact that Tigrayans are defeated.
The TPLF is defeated.
Okay, sorry, TPLF is defeated. There could always be, what started this, if it hasn't been dealt with, can always resume back. I mean, this is what we're looking at.
I think
in order to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Bringing in an outside force will not help because first and foremost, Ethiopia is a sovereign country.
Yeah,
and
okay.
I don't think they'll accept a foreign force on their soil.
Yeah.
And secondly, the TPLF has signed saying that they've recognized the authority of the federal government and they've also acknowledged the fact that the federal army can place itself anywhere in the region. Therefore, it's up to the...
Have they been dissolved within the army?
Yes.
They have? They are now part of the Ethiopian army?
What they used to call the TDF is no longer.
Okay.
It's no longer a legitimate force. It has never been a legitimate force, and it's no longer a legitimate force. So it's only the Ethiopian army and the Ethiopian state that is going to be responsible for keeping the security of that region.
Okay.
They're basically Ethiopians. This notion of trying to bring in Eritrea, bring in other outside players, it won't work because the TPLF has to see itself as part of Ethiopia. It has got no other option. And in that case, there's no point in bringing an outside force into the region. There's enough force already.
Now, this issue, you know, whenever we have problems, we tend to think that, okay, if the problems go away, if the fighting has gone away, then the problem will have gone away. Nigeria's had this when it had the 2 years in the 70s when the Biafra War took place. But the problem never went away. Nigerian federal government won the war, but after winning the war, now 20, 40 years later, there is the reassumption of as Nnamdi Kanu, as you're aware, talking about iPod and the structure now happening as well in Nigeria connected to is it called Yobo line? The Igbos, the Yorubas are trying to break away as the Igbos are trying to. So these structures, if they are not dealt with within the federal structure of government, the ethnicity and federalism, these two issues, ethnicity and federalism, we have always been discussing them over here, are issues which will always resurface at some point with the fresh agendas and so on. But is there a way in which disagreement could sit down in Ethiopia and say, hang on a minute, let's solve this thing once and for all, so we don't really have this kind of civil war breaking out again? Nigerians haven't addressed it,
yes,
so there's a big worry there.
The reason why the civil war broke out in Ethiopia is not because of any ethnic tensions in the north. Of course, there are some ethnic tensions in parts of the country.
Yeah.
But the problem is the TPLF, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, does not know what it stands for. Is it fighting to liberate? I mean, it says liberation of the Tigray people.
Yeah.
Is it fighting for independence? Is it fighting for cessation? Is it fighting to be? What is it fighting for?
Okay.
The problem we have now is the TPLF is controlled not by Tigrayans themselves. It is a proxy for the Western powers. It's there to destabilize the region. It's there to destabilize Ethiopia.
Oh, the Western powers coming now.
Because they're the ones financing it. They're the ones. It's the Americans sending their planes, and instead of sending biscuits, they're sending bullets. And the TPLF has got no agenda of its own.
Yeah.
If it was a liberation, I think they themselves wrote out a constitution that says guaranteed the right for cessation. So they could have done it peacefully. I mean, even the Ethiopian mayor of Addis Ababa, the capital, she said that if their intention was to have an independent Tigray, they could have gone about it in a peaceful way. They had no need for war. There was no need for war, and the reason why the TPLF launched the war and carried out the war for the past 2 years at great cost to its own people
of course,
is because it's pushing the agendas of the West. And as you know, in Africa, it's Africans that are being used to destabilize Africa.
Yeah.
When the peace, the TPLF had held the region hostage for the past 20 years by refusing to accept the 2002 border ruling that gave Badame to Eritrea.
Yeah, yeah.
They refused to accept that, and since then there's been a lot of tension. Eritrea has been forced to place its army on the border, on alert. The past 4 years, in 2018, when Prime Minister Abiy came in and made the brave step of making peace with Eritrea, it was the TPLF that refused the peace.
Yeah.
So the TPLF is never for peace. It never stood for peace and never wants peace.
Yep, but the issue which normally brings these kind of disagreements, like I said earlier on, comes from the political cycles we have. Because if you have the unity, even if the West is to come in, that division wouldn't happen. If
the TPLF is not a political organization, it's just a rogue group of people who are out to get the most for themselves.
Yeah, but it was part of Tigrayan Liberation Force could be a rogue, but it was part of the Tigrayans' federal structure in Tigray. They were ruling
part of Ethiopia, but they were ruling through the muzzle of the gun.
Yeah, when they part of an elected government in Tigray, because if
the 100% vote they got, or they in the last election they had in September, I think they won 10 million votes out of the 2.7 million.
Yeah, but
voters.
that's part of Ethiopia, isn't it? Because that's why I'm bringing in the ethnicity. Because it's like it's like this. I come from Uganda. I'm Uganda man. My tribe, and then suddenly my tribe is fighting a central government, so there is that element of togetherism that comes in because of the tribe where I come from, and that is where I say the ethnicity comes in, and it's been a big problem in Africa. Now that issue, if it's not addressed, it's bound to come back, and I'm looking at this agreement and I'm thinking, have they addressed the issue of that region, that particular region on its own? Because Ethiopia itself is a massive country, but if you have one of your internal issues in an internal region of fighting, like we've had in other areas, like I gave you the Nigerian example of the Igbos and the federal government at the time, they didn't address the issue, and they're not addressing it now.
But it's a
that's
different,
why
it's a different situation with TPLF, because like I said, the TPLF doesn't know what it wants. If it had clear political demands, then it could have sat down with the federal government and said, yes, we want this, this, this. And if they can prove that they're being discriminated against because they're Tigrayans, I mean, the defense minister of the Ethiopian defense minister is from the Tigray,
the
Tigrayan region.
Really? Yeah.
So to say that they've been targeted because of their ethnicity is wrong. What they were targeted for, I think the 27 years that they were in power, because they abused their power, people targeted the TPLF, and it so happens because they were the ones that brought in the ethnic politics. Every single member of the TPLF is a Tigrayan, but not every single member of the Tigray person from Tigray is the TPLF.
All right.
So if you target the TPLF, the chances are you are targeting a Tigrayan because of the membership is only Tigrayan. But the TPLF as a group, I don't know if you can call it a party, or I don't know what you can call it, has committed a lot of grave, serious crimes in Ethiopia and in the region, and also including Eritrea. So these people are accountable. So if you were to take them to court, and they appear in court, every single one of them will be from the Tigray region because of how the party is selected.
No,
so, but they're not targeting. They've not been targeted because they are Tigrayans. They've been targeted because they are TPLF members.
As far as atrocities are concerned, I think the UN has explained that both sides have committed atrocities. On both sides, the Ethiopian army has committed atrocities, and the Tigrayans have committed atrocities. So, as far as the UN is concerned, and sometimes it's very difficult to verify these because you can't, when people are found dead or people are cut off, hands are cut off or something, it's very difficult to find which areas these people who has actually committed the crime. But my main aim at the moment, or rather what I look at as an outsider, is to see that an issue of this nature does not happen again. And if it's to happen again, how do you, if it's to, in order to, because sometimes it's good to solve a solution, to find a solution to something that you anticipate might happen again. And what I'm looking at the moment, and I think most of my viewers would want to know, is how do we make sure that such a thing doesn't happen again? Because if you remain having doubts here, somewhere along the way, something similar could come back again.
If you don't want this
to happen again, what can
you have to eliminate the TPLF, the thinking of the TPLF, the thinking of the TPLF. The problem the TPLF has is it's got its Western backers.
Okay.
It's got its people in the West that is urging it on, you know, giving them accolades that they are not deserving of. And you have got this massive misinformation network led by Martin Plaut. He's one of their members.
Yeah, Martin Plaut, my friend.
He's pumping misinformation, and they don't want the area to heal. They're scratching the wounds.
Yeah, you're bringing in my friend. I think being an Englishman and being from here, I think he's looking at it from a different angle as an Englishman.
I think he's from South Africa.
He's from South Africa.
And then you have this. The problem. The thing is, you have another. I think she's some sort of academic, or I don't know what she is in Holland, and she's there churning out all this information. And then you have a Lord Alton of Liverpool here in the Lords, the House of Lords, asking questions about the they're making this TPLF to be this the victim when the TPLF itself is the aggressor. And when we come to the TPLF, it's been urged, it's been pushed by the Westerners. But as Africans, what we have to ask is, when you look at the Germans, they committed atrocities in Namibia. The Belgians committed atrocities in the Congo. The French committed atrocities in Algeria. The British in Kenya and all over Africa.
I know.
And this is recently. And we have to ask as Africans, when did these brutal colonizers turn to advocates of African rights? Where was the turning point? I mean, were we asleep? Or how did we miss it? All of a sudden they're more concerned about what they should, this peace agreement, coming back to the peace agreement. It was led by the African Union. You had the former Nigerian president leading it.
Olusegun Obasanjo.
And a solution came about.
Of
course, the Americans tried to impose themselves. The Europeans were not there. They were not invited. It was essentially an African solution. And it has brought about peace. Whether the TPLF would accept or not, I think it has got no options but to accept it. Again, I'm sure its American backers, its European backers would want it to launch war, to destabilize the region. But I think the people are fed up with war and destruction. And I think, coming back to the question, is this a lasting solution? I think 2 years ago, the people, the Tigray people, were sold a story by the TPLF and its Western media. I think there's a guy, I remember the guy in Kenya, a guy called Rashid Abdi.
Abdi.
He said that the Tigrayans cannot be defeated in war, or to something. And there were all this war rhetoric. And I think the people believed it, especially the Tigrayans in the West, in the diaspora, saying that there was a military solution to their problem. And they launched the disastrous war. I think they probably pushed back Tigray 100 years or so. And now the leader is saying that this is a political question which is being solved by the peace process. This could have been done 2 years, 3 years ago.
It could.
Without all the deaths.
I've got one thing here which I need you to, which has been disturbing me personally, and I think several of my colleagues as well, who have covered Africa for a very, very long time. And that is the issue of Western governments and others destabilizing the African regions. When destabilization comes in, it comes in because there is a weak point somewhere where there isn't any unity. Because there are countries which have, obviously they can never destabilize, because there are no weak points in them. Now, that is how I'm looking at it. Because when we start blaming the West sometimes, we don't blame ourselves. We shift the blame from ourselves to somebody else. Now, there was a weakness there, which was there, and which had never been dealt with, because Ethiopia was stable for a very, very, very long time.
It was not stable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, it comes to the Western media. The Western media was trying to tell you stable, but it was stable. There were, I think, the previous, the last EPLF government had an election in 2015. And it won 100% of the parliamentary votes.
Okay.
Within a few months, the Oromo region was up in arms, civilian protests.
Yeah.
And that process was essentially ignored by the Western media. It was as if nothing was happening.
But
it was boiling. It was boiling.
It was there.
It was there. It was boiling. But no one was covering it because they were supporters of the TPLF-led Ethiopian government. And the thing about the West is they will always choose the stories that they feel would further their own
interests. Agendas.
Well, so of course, this claim that Ethiopia was stable is nonsense.
No. What I'm saying, the reason why I'm saying it's stable, why was there no war in the last, say 50, 80, why was there no war in about 50 years ago or something like that? That's what I'm saying, the stability, which led even to the African...
There will always be a war. If you want to go back
there could have been small internal wars, but...
Not small internal. In the 1960s, Ethiopia had several... wars with Somalia. And in 1974, when the
but that's an outside war. It was not an internal one.
When the and then in 1974 there was a coup overthrowing the emperor, and that essentially the reason behind the coup was the war in Eritrea, the liberation war, because the Ethiopian army was fed up and they wanted a change, and that started a whole chain of reaction. Even the military government that came into power in 1974. War had never enjoyed any peace because it was fighting all sorts of wars. It was fighting in Eritrea, it was fighting in Tigray, it was fighting in the Oromo region. And again, when TPLF came, it kind of put a lid on it.
Okay.
But there were a lot of wars that were met brutally.
We could simply say that they could have been internal kind of. These cracks are always there. The cracks are always there. In Africa, this is one thing I've noticed, be it Ghana, be it Nigeria, be it Uganda, the cracks are there. Now, the cracks that are there, those are the cracks of ethnicity, and those are the cracks of federalism, in a way, where each regions are trying to find the way in which themselves, in terms of leadership, because other people have abused the powers, or have abused the national cake. They're not eating, they're not sharing the national cake. So this comes in from that kind of thing. And that's why I'm saying, look, I think we should stop, maybe to a certain extent, blaming the West so much, and look more at the bigger picture of saying, how do we share the national cake? You're here now in UK, you're seeing Scotland saying, look, we want to move on, and they are saying, the new man who has come in, Labour man, is saying, look, I think I'm going to dissolve and give more powers to the regional governments of Ethiopia, Scotland and Northern Ireland and Wales. Regional powers, then it will stop all this nonsense of saying, let's move on and break away from the federation that we have. Now, when you look at it from the context of the African view, there isn't even a talk of maybe give us a referendum or something like that, like the way the Nigerians are demanding. Because these internal, there's very little structures that we get to know. But my case here is that I try to say, like in this peace agreement, can we find a solution to these even internal small ones? Because I don't see it in this agreement. It might help make sure that there's no more of these arguments. We've given them regional more, maybe give them more regional powers or something.
Giving them more regional powers.
They have too much power already.
It might work, but essentially we need people who are interested in peace. Opportunities. The TPLF, like I was saying, if we remove the TPLF, then most of the problems would be raised. Because when you look at the Eritrean government and the Ethiopian government, they had tried their best in the past 4 years to forge a way of peace. the Eritrean government made the courageous decision of opening the borders. That was abused by the TPLF.
Okay.
They encouraged trade, but everything has come to a grinding halt because, again, the TPLF it's the mole, the Western mole inside Ethiopia. It's there to destabilize Ethiopia.
You're looking more at the West. You're looking more at the West. I want to read something here, which I picked up from a former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, which could maybe lead to some kind of knowledge on what could have been the cause of this. Okay, this is this is the quote from him. When Ethiopian Prime Minister Lieutenant Colonel Abiy Ahmed came to power in 2018, he made significant reforms to the country's judicial system, economy, and foreign policy. According to an article, that is, he wrote that in an article, Haile Mali Desalegn, the former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, TPLF officials were concerned these moves were going to threaten their political and economical position in the country. Hence, TPLF officials started defying orders from the federal government and made overt and covert actions to undermine and delegitimize the parliament, defense forces, and the federal government. Is this true? Is this true? Because if
it's essentially what he's saying is that you were talking about the national cake.
Okay. Okay.
When the TPLF was in power, it was only allowing other people to look in, and it was enjoying the cake.
Okay.
And when Prime Minister Abiy came along, he says everyone's equal. So they've lost their position of what do you call it? Their influence. And to them, that was a defeat. They wanted to be always in control. They couldn't stand another person in charge. And again, I think the former Prime Minister is right in saying that they were trying to torpedo all the initiatives of Prime Minister Abiy. They've done that with the peace between Ethiopia and Eritrea, and hence the reason why there's been a war raging in the past 2 years.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So you sort of tend to agree with him. Are you agreeing with him?
I'm agreeing with him in the sense that, of course, when their privileges were taken away from them, they threw their toys out of the pram, and they decided to dismantle the Ethiopian state. I mean, we've heard them say, the Ethiopian Tigrayan officials saying that they're happy. They're happy to see Ethiopia fade in their lifetime, disintegrate in their lifetime.
Okay.
And even the people who were involved in the Pretoria
agreement.
I think Getachew read that. He's on record of saying that he would go to the gates of hell to see Ethiopia disintegrate.
Really?
And now he's signed a peace agreement saying that he's going to lay down arms. So you tell me who's. So they come up with all these rhetorics.
The issue of neighboring countries, you talked about it and you said, look, there's no point of having a country, the neighboring country, being part of the peace agreement because this is an internal war. But when neighboring countries sit together, when you sit with your neighbors and decide on issues, although it may be happening in your house, there could be something. I'm looking at it from an African point of view. If you have a disagreement with your wife or your kids or what, and then an outsider comes in, you don't beat your wife, don't do this. It helps sometimes to snooze that sort of agreement in a way that you don't misbehave as a gentleman.
It's like,
so I look at it from that angle because your wife is going to run to the neighbor, and this is where the whole thing is with the.
But if the neighbor's child is disturbing you or throwing stones into your property, you don't directly deal with the child. You tell the parents. And the parents will discipline the child. And this is the same thing. The Ethiopian government they've got open channels.
Okay.
The Eritrean and Ethiopian government have open channels, and whatever the problem is, the Ethiopian government, it's the response. The TPLF is
but the fact that they went outside to deal with the issue of not to solve it within inside, they went to South Africa, they went to Nairobi to solve the problem, to deal with the agreements outside. I think that means the outsiders have contributed, so their voices have got to be heard.
The voices have to be heard. Outsiders, the African Union and President Obasanjo. They facilitated what should have been done by the Ethiopian government and the
themselves,
TPLF 2 years ago, because
Yeah.
there was an opportunity for them to sit down and discuss this before everything got out of hand. But obviously, after 2 years of brutal war, and the TPLF committing great atrocities in
my main worry again here is that there are more than I should say over 2 million people from the Tigray region outside Ethiopia. Most of them, I saw this from the demonstrations here in UK, demonstrations in the USA, in Australia, in Kenya, Nairobi, and also in South Africa. So
where did these 2 million come from?
No. Well, it's an estimated figure anyway by the UN. And
but you were saying, you see,
the reason why I'm saying this is I'm coming to that point is that with such a large amount of people from the region outside the country, there is that tendency, there probably will be, because one other thing I have to tell you is that they have the money. They have the money.
Yeah, they've embezzled a lot of money, yes.
They embezzled a lot of money. I don't know about that embezzlement.
Well, they've embezzled. I think they themselves know it, and they will admit to it.
All I know is that doing my research, I just discovered that the American organization, the British organization, and several of them, even when I called them here, I had an interview with them at the beginning of the year, and several of them were saying, oh, we're willing to raise this amount to a tune of this amount of money. And if I look at the money that could possibly go in there, there is that feeling that this money would have gone way into developing the region rather than buying more arms or doing something like that. So the agreement hasn't taken care of the diaspora in a way. It's only taken care of those within the Tigray region and within the country.
I think
can there be something that can be done?
The Tigray diaspora is disengaged. I think even
they're disengaged. You're sure?
Even the leader of the TPLF was saying that the war was fought by Tigrayans inside Tigray, not by Tigrayans outside.
Yeah.
So the problem with the diaspora is they're living up to this image.
Yeah.
It's all well and good to make demonstrations on the streets of London and urging those in the Tigray to go and fight.
Yeah.
Yes, after the demonstration, you go to your warm home, you sleep in your warm bed. But those in Tigray are paying for the consequences. So it's very easy. It's very easy to demand more war.
Yeah.
So the diaspora, I think, should be taken out of the equation.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because their demand, they're in a cloud.
No. When somebody has got money, trust me.
Yeah,
you don't take him out of the equation.
But then,
when somebody can, in one evening, raise nearly £100,000, you don't take him out of the equation. Because I'm talking about the Cameroonians now. I've been interviewing Cameroonians, southern Cameroonians, and they've been holding events massively. I went to one last year, and massively, the southern Cameroon is trying to break away from northern Cameroon. And they even have a leader here, a lady who I invited here and talk to on this show. So you can dismiss them in a way, but somewhere along the way, when money comes into an equation, usually it softens certain things. That's why I'm saying, look, the government of Ethiopia has got to have a look at not just what's happening on the ground, but it could also destabilize the country as a whole.
Yes, I think to a certain extent, the reason why the TPLF launched this war was because it believed that it had the diaspora, it had the money, it had the support. But that turned out to be more of a pipery. It didn't exist. At the end of the day, someone in the West, a Tigray in the West, is not going to help you win the war on the ground.
Of course not, of course not,
He can send you however much money you want. But if you're facing a formidable enemy like the Ethiopian army, then you have got no chance. And again, if you overstretch yourself and you try to go into Eritrea and take on the Eritrean armed forces, you're overestimating your ability. And your trust in the diaspora is what has led them to this point.
To where they are.
Because the diaspora has been leading, the Tigrayan diaspora has been pushing the agenda. They're saying, oh, we shouldn't be subjugating ourselves, we shouldn't be doing this, we are this proud nation. They've created this false history, false narrative that's been helped by the likes of Plaut, by the likes of Rashid, by the likes of this. and all of a sudden, in the story, they've been.
You're mentioning Nantigrayans. These
Yes,
are,
because they are if you check their Twitter,
yeah,
you think that they had more vested in Tigray than the Tigrayans.
because I think to them it's giving them work to do. Platon's got something to do, and other people have got something to do.
I think there's another. Have you heard of the crisis group? Supposed to be. I don't know what they're. They need. You see, if you have even the name crisis group means that you need to have crisis for you to have employment. So therefore, they can never see the resolution of a conflict like the one in Ethiopia because they need constant feeding.
Well, the thing is, I'm a very optimistic person, and I believe that what is happening, I would really like there not to be any wars at all. But at the same time, I also like to see that all areas are covered, because as we're seeing with the Russian events now taking place in Ukraine and so on, war is not a good thing. It kills a lot of people. It brings in a lot of havoc, and not just the people it kills, but at the same time, so many things happen. But then at the same time, I try to look at the solution, and I'm trying to think, if you are an advisor like you are to the ambassador, what would you advise the ambassador or Prime Minister Ham to do now to make sure that this thing doesn't happen again?
Make sure that the TPLF completely disarms and is not in a position to threaten either Ethiopia or Eritrea again. Yes, you cannot also, for the Ethiopian government, at the end of the day, even members of the TPLF are Ethiopians, and they're responsible.
Exactly.
They are the responsibility of the Ethiopian government. But for example, in the peace agreement that has in the Pretoria peace agreement, one of the responsibilities of the Ethiopian army is to ensure that there is no cross-border attacks.
Okay.
That is basically saying that it has to ensure that the TPLF does not attack Eritrea over
How
the
about
border.
bringing them into government, so that you do a joint government? That could have been part of the parcel
if you bring them into government, I think it's the classic African case. if you have the TPLF in government and in power.
No, I'm not saying them themselves, but I'm saying you're sharing power now. You're saying, you know what? You're a defense minister. You're from Tigray. You're minister of economics.
We have to draw a line. We're talking about TPLF, not the people of Tigray. So with the TPLF, if you bring the TPLF into power and you try to forge a future, it would be like looking for your your stolen goat with the person that stole it. So you'll never find it. So you have to take that away. You have to take the TPLF out of the equation. The TPLF cannot have a future, a political future in the region. It has to go. The mentality, the thinking has to go. Yes, the Tigrayans are not. I'm not talking about the Tigrayans.
The thing is,
this notion that you can you see, when I talk about,
you can't take that away when you haven't put the education in, because Ethiopia has to put the education into the Tigray region in order to take that away. Because if you walk away and you still, I mean, it's like what they say, you can get an Africa out of Africa, but you can't get Africa out of the African. So similarly, you can get a Tigrayan out of Tigrayan and do whatever, but you might not be able to get the Tigray itself, TPLA, out of those people, because you're going to put them in the army, you're going to do that, but in the end, if you haven't educated them...
The TPLF has imposed itself on the people of Tigray for the past 40, 50 years. And when I say we have to get rid of the TPLF way of thinking, I'll give you an example. The TPLF believes that for the Tigrayan identity or for Tigray to survive, the Ethiopian state must be dismantled, and not only the Ethiopian state, but Eritrea must also not exist. It wants to create this. It wants to be an oasis in a sea of chaos, and this is the opposite of the Eritrean mentality. With the Eritrean government, we want to create a sea of calm, and we will be part of that calm. Because all your regions have to be calm. You cannot be sitting in your home when all around you is on fire.
Yeah.
You need to make sure the fire is out everywhere.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is this. The problem of Africa has always been similarly, is that we come in, I can break this cup up as it is and pour the water and everything, and then think I've solved the problem. But the water will keep flowing and it will go in other areas.
Yes,
so this is that I'm saying. But if education becomes part of it and said, look, this is we all need to enjoy the national cake. This is what you can't say. Eritrea can't exist. You can't say Ethiopia has to.
Yeah.
You get the point. So part of that is a scheme of education to educate these people who are just getting.
That is true. You have to change.
So that's why I'm saying
yes.
the peace agreement should have involved all these things
When I say you have to get rid of the TPLF, I'm not talking about destruction, military also. You have to take the way, the thinking. The thinking of the TPLF is finished. Okay. It has not gotten anywhere. It has launched war with Ethiopia. It has launched war with Eritrea. It has tried its best. It's strutted itself on the stage, and it's turned out to be nothing but the story of the emperor's new clothes.
Okay, yeah.
People have seen. The people of Tigray have seen it for what it is.
Yeah.
It is an organization that only lives for itself, and it does not care how many people it kills. It does not care how many people suffer. It's only there for its own benefit, for the benefit of a few.
Yeah.
That is the mentality that we have to get rid of.
Yeah.
Like you say, the education
is the key. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Informing. You have to have an informed population who can make judgments based on what they see and what their needs are.
Another thing which I also saw, the agreement didn't involve women. There were very few women, if at all, and I really didn't see any because if women had been part of the agreement in saying that, look, if they are going to be part of the agreement, to be part of those who signed the agreement, as leaders, the women leaders within the various organizations.
It's a fair point, but the agreement was between, it was essentially
when we don't involve
two military powers.
Yeah.
The Ethiopian military and the TPLF military. And
no, that was mainly in Nairobi. The Nairobi summit involved the military powers, but the Ethiopian one was involving delegates who are supposed to sit down and listen to all the sides and know exactly what is being signed and how it's, because the implementation of it is another issue. When you don't allow an outsider sometimes, because we tend to hear a lot of rumors. It's like now you're telling me about Martin Plant and you're telling me about all the others. You are in such a position that you have the truth rather than any outsider. As a journalist, I can pick up anything and I said maybe it's true or not, but I will probably need somebody to actually give me a basis of it, and I'll believe it, So you're in that sort of position, and that's why when you know what the media picks up, you can easily spray it around and say, no, this is the reality, and go here and you'll find it. That's what I'm saying. Look, you needed to involve them.
Yeah, you need to involve them, but I think this notion that if you involve women somehow everything's going to be okay. But when you think about it, we have to learn that Britain went to war with a woman in power.
Yeah.
And the Falklands War could have been avoided because it was the sinking of the Belgrano.
Yeah. The Argentina,
And women are not these docile politicians, because you had the golden year of Israel that was involved in war.
Yeah.
I think it would be underestimating women to think that they're creatures of peace. But,
no.
Then again, it's regardless of whether it's men or women. That's beside the point.
You got me over there. But what I was looking at mainly is they tend to bring out something. Because they tend to bring out something which
they give you a balance. They give you a different perspective.
They give you the balance, and that balance was not there. You see, that is the only thing I'm looking at. I'm not looking at it from the angle, because some of them, in fact, may be even fighters. There were women fighters.
But there were women fighters. I mean, there are clips of TPLF women fighters urging their people to fight. So you don't really need those kind of women, because they were urging their men to fight. They were urging this to fight. What we have to remember is those urging others to fight don't really get involved in the fighting themselves. They're not affected that much. Like that's why when you come to the diaspora, they can raise all the money they like. They can raise awareness. They can roll around the streets of London in the cold or in the wet, and they can put on all sorts of dramas. But at the end of the day, they go to a comfortable home. They're not affected. They're not affected.
The issue which we fear most, especially in Africa, is maybe Ethiopia going into a structure of anarchy in a way that we may have a guerrilla war within the country, which may be even worse, because leave that one where you are going into, you know straight away that Eritrea has been fighting the Ethiopian army, and they're in a particular area. But there is this particular kind of war which is fought within the people, where people take bombs here and there and they start killing people. That kind of internal guerrilla warfare could be more damaging and could kill more people than the real war itself.
It's happening in Ethiopia. There are other regions, especially I think there's Oromo movement that's displacing a lot of Amharas. And again, this comes down to the way the country was governed for the past 27 years, where you divide it up, and Ethiopians were pitted against Ethiopians and saying that this is not your region, this is my region, what are you doing here, and get out of my land. And the Eritrean president was, in an interview, said that he was one of the first persons to see a draft of the Ethiopian constitution in 1994. And he said he read it, and he felt that this was not something that should be implemented, because it was just a recipe for disaster along ethnic lines. And I think previous Ethiopian governments had to, yes, there were no angels, but they had this sense of being Ethiopian. I mean, when the TPLF Prime Minister, Meles Zenawi, I think he never uttered the word Ethiopia. He always referred to it as the country or this country, or he was never proud of the country. And the TPLF, I mean, I've heard
observant,
and Ethiopians, I've heard Ethiopians saying that the TPLF hated Ethiopia, but they still ruled it for 27 years. To them, it was the goose that was laying the golden egg, and that was why they liked it. But this concept of a unified Ethiopia terrified them, because they were a minority. And they made sure that as a minority, they believed that as a minority, the only hope in the region, not just in Ethiopia, in the region, was to cause instability and chaos.
You see, it's interesting, because when the West quoted Abiy Ahmed, and even he got a Nobel Prize, and you're looking at a man they had seen who was highly intelligent, well liked by the people, well presented by Ethiopia, and a man who has everything to give, not just Ethiopia, but Africa as a whole. And then out of the blue, this war comes in, which again brought a different picture of the man. And of course, his stand now and the winning as he has achieved. What kind of legacy are we looking at as far as this concerned?
When you talk about the Nobel Peace Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize was given to him, in my opinion, to cause instability. Because he was given peace. He was given the Nobel Peace Prize for making peace with Eritrea. To make peace, there are two parties. They gave it to Prime Minister Abiy, but they denied President Isaias.
All right.
It's when they gave Mandela and in South Africa, who was.
Well, they gave Mandela, and they gave, of course, Smith.
No, not Smith.
Not Smith. The South African, the former South African president.
They share
Ian Botha.
And they share the Nobel Peace Prize, and that should have happened, but it doesn't matter. But it was designed to cause friction between the two, and because they see Ethiopia and Eritrea work together for a peaceful region, and if you have a peaceful region, and you have people developing, and if you have people focusing on work and development, that is a big threat.
Okay, we're coming towards the end of the program. What kind of message now are we getting from you, of what we get from you, of what is to happen next, in order to avoid all this? Because that's how I want to end this program on. so we don't have to go through this again. Yeah.
We have in 2018 we had the region was on the brink, was on the cusp of enjoying the dividends of peace. It hasn't happened, but this is another opportunity, and we should not miss it. This is an opportunity to embrace by everyone involved, and we've seen what war can bring in the past few years. The past few years has brought about great destruction, death, and unnecessary hardship. And this we have to learn from.
Okay.
And it might not be perfect in all senses, but it is still a start, and we should work, everyone should be involved, the African Union, the Ethiopians, the TPLF, and everyone involved should work towards achieving complete peace and harmony in the region so that our people can have rest and can develop.
Okay, I hope they've listened, and I hope they've viewed, and I hope they'll take the message as you're giving it. I just want to say thank you very much for viewing us, and I do hope that we'll be together again for another edition of Africa Speaks next week. Thank you, and may God bless you all.
At Diaspora Insurance, we understand the importance of dignified send-offs within Ghanaian culture and traditions. We also understand that you want to avoid the double trauma of your family grieving and not having the financial support to cover funeral expenses when you're not around. With our Diaspora Funeral Cash Plan, you can now cover yourself or your family in Ghana or abroad. With no medicals required, we'll accept you if you are under 75 years. Visit our website today or call us to complete a simple form in under 5 minutes. With Diaspora Insurance, your peace of mind is guaranteed.